gentlemen, and welcome back to Pop Culture Graveyard. With me, as always, is Dave Horowitz. I am Hollis James, and this week we are going to jump into one of our favorite TV series of all time, Barney Miller. For those of you who have not yet seen Barney Miller, you've had like 40 years, but in case you haven't seen it, it is a fictional cop show set in the 12th precinct in Greenwich Village, New York, in the 70s and early 80s. It stars a group of cops of various ethnicities, and the main hook of the show is that the Barney Miller character is the captain and is very, what would you say, Dave, humanistic and tender?
Mm-hmm. I believe that Barney Miller's main trait is empathy.
Empathy. He has great empathy for all of the wonderful people he works with, as well as every single stranger that walks in through that squad room door.
And that's worth mentioning.
Mm-hmm.
The show consists of arrestees being brought in through that door where they interact with these police.
And what makes the show truly unique is that the interaction between the police and the community never ends ugly. It is a respectful give and take between all parties considered. And that's the main reason, the empathy that Dave mentioned, why it's been one of our favorite shows for our entire lives. Would you say it is top 10 for you? Top 5? How high does it go?
Are you going series or?
Yes, TV series.
Television series.
Yes, American television series.
American television series.
Yeah, let's get serious.
I think I might shock you. No, I don't think it's shocking. Top 3.
Ooh, okay.
Possibly because I'm only halfway through it at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm rewatching, obviously.
Yeah.
Possibly number 1 of all time.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm tempted. Yeah. I mean, you obviously can't do that because of Columbo.
Yeah, Columbo.
But I bet, how far behind are you putting Barney Miller behind Columbo?
It's top 10.
Okay.
It's
That's a big deal. Your top 10
that is a big deal.
Is my top 3. I don't have, you're working with 1,000. I'm working with like,
it's so true.
80. Yeah.
I love so many things. Yeah, that's big for you, top 3. I assume MASH edges it out.
That's right. That's correct. Yeah. I'm going to say that MASH and Barney Miller probably struggle for first place. And you know what? I weirdly want to say that, like, I think I might be like MASH, Barney Miller, constantly fluctuating.
Right.
With 30 Rock under it.
Wow. Dark horse candidate.
Bizarre.
I didn't see that coming.
I just find it so fun. It has none of the gravitas. It has none of the history, but I just find it so, there's a certain amount of comfort I ask for from a show. And 30 Rock delivers for me.
You know what 30 Rock doesn't deliver for me? It's farcical. I don't like farces. Yeah. So it doesn't have enough realism for me. Much like Parks and Recreation, it's a heightened, I appreciate that show. I know it's fantastic and I enjoy watching it when I do.
Yeah.
But it's not the real world. It's one step removed for me.
Yeah, I get that.
But Barney Miller, oh my God, would you say a transformative show for both of us and is part of why we became the people we are?
Yeah, that's a point we'll keep coming back to. These are my dads, my TV dads, Barney Miller and Hawkeye Pierce. And they're my chosen TV dads, mainly because we're going to always say that, because of the kindness.
Yeah.
Because of the kindness that was surrounded by the opposite. Barney Miller is a cop show.
Yeah, we have to talk about that.
Cop show full of kindness. I mean, yeah, it's obviously.
How rare is that?
I have imaginary meetings where someone says, I have this idea for a cop show. Oh, there's a lot of cop shows right now. I don't think we want to do a cop show. No, hear me out. You know how your cops are always out busting people? We don't tape any of that. We only do them at the office doing the paperwork. Right. What do you say?
Yeah,
like, that sounds terrible. It's like, it's a lot of typing and a lot of talking about what happened while they were out there. And that's not going to work. It's like, but it's gonna.
Yeah, it's the antithesis of every other cop show when someone puts that in your mind. The execs' mouths must have been watering when they heard, cop show. And they're picturing guys jumping over fences and tackling perps And instead it's like, the bathroom doesn't work this episode.
Mhm.
There's a
Yeah.
leak. The air conditioning's out. The fan is not working. Like,
Yeah.
and that forced the show to be focused on characters and human interaction. And it's
Characters, writing,
mhm,
overreaching excitement was never gonna help this show.
no.
There was no like, "Oh, I got this we have this great mastermind criminal commits a crime, the crime gets solved." Doesn't matter that much what people say.
Yeah.
It matters more than anything. Like, this show is about what people say.
And it forced you to be invested in the characters because you lived with them. You worked with them. They were coworkers every time you watched. You
Mm.
were at your desk at home opposite Fish and Chano and Wojo and all them. There was a familiarity. You know what? Because they didn't totally not do the whodunit, like, who's this master criminal? How will they catch him? Oh my God, is he going to be shot? They had that element. They had Wojo and Harris and them would go out on a call, a bank
Yeah.
heist, or to deliver ransom money. Wojo jogs to deliver ransom money. And it's like, it never got in the way of the comedy because it
Mhm.
was rooted in reality and these things actually happen.
It
But
was very MASH-like that way.
yes, very MASH like that way. Because it wasn't afraid to get serious and to turn serious on a dime, whether it was somebody saying something slightly racist and like Harris calling them on it,
Mhm.
or whether it was somebody having to shoot someone and then not wanting to be a cop anymore, as
Coming
with
wow,
happened.
yeah.
Yeah,
Chano.
yeah. And I think later Dietrich had to do the same thing, and he was despondent. It knew that the audience could handle it. It trusted us in a way that shows today don't do. They
Yeah.
dumb everything down because in their mind, people are idiots and they don't think people can, process complex emotions along with comedy. And we can. It's just that no audiences today have practice.
Even while they were I mean, you think today, even then, while Barney Miller was on, cops were on every other channel shooting the crap out of people
Yeah.
and then moving on to the next scene.
Hmm.
Pew, pew, pew.
Not even TV too, but like in all the movies, and books like the Choir Boys or whatever, and movies like Fuzz, and there was this rough and tumble kind of cop life and French Connection where it's like, they toned the guy up, they kind of beat a confession out of him, or they did whatever, and then you have basically a half-hour comedy that reads more like a therapy session than a cop show. It's so
Well,
refreshing.
yeah, somebody says, scene 1 or, first act, this happens, and then Chano shoots a guy. Any other cop show is like, and then this happens, and then this, like all these other non-related things. This show is Chano shoots a guy. The rest of the show is related to Chano dealing with the fact that
Right.
he shot a guy.
We get to see where Chano lives. They built another set just for this episode.
Yeah,
That
just so they could
think
show
about
him at
that.
home.
Yep.
It's
Despondent.
despondent. And this is what I'm talking about. This is what drives Barney Miller to the top. This is why Barney Miller is one of my dads. This is why I love that these shows shaped us. We were the clay, and these shows molded us into nice, kind people. We were put in the kiln and cured and stayed. But I feel like millions of Barney Miller fans and MASH fans, it wore off.
Yeah.
And they think of Barney Miller's attitude and Hawkeye's attitude and BJ's attitude and they think of them as pie in the sky now. They look back and go, oh, it was fiction.
Right.
And I say it didn't have to be. They were trying to send
They
a
created
message.
they created the world they wanted to live in. And
Mhm.
we wanted to live in that world. And you're right, because today, people wonder why there's a lack of empathy today. And I point, and it's not trivial, these TV shows and movies and books and magazines and everything of a certain age that made us. Each era has their own pop culture cocoon that surrounds them. And people today who grow up on, the sexism and mercenary capitalism of Mad Men and the kind of brutal blood sport that is Game of Thrones, these shows that kind of revel in our least appealing emotions, for lack of a better, our
yeah.
basest emotions. It's no wonder that they have a lack of empathy today.
What's that show with the father who is going to he's going to die or he's going to give up control of the company?
Yeah,
And
I tried to watch Succession. this is what I don't get. I don't want to spend time with any of those characters.
People are masturbatory about the evilness of everyone in this show. Reveling, I think you said earlier, they revel in the horrificness of the people in this show.
I don't care who they are. You could tell who they are right away. Why do you want to spend time with them? They're not going to change.
I think that maybe, I don't know, maybe it's thank God the real life isn't like, if somebody made a show that's so bad, it makes real life seem better.
Yeah, but that is real life. Succession is real life. Those people are out there. Why do you think CEOs make 400% more than their workers? Like, those people are out there. So it is reality. I want to break from reality. Whenever I flip around TV, it's just, serial killer documentary. But like, I was into true crime and serial killers and everything. And then I, got older and I lost people. Life kicked me around. And I don't see the romance in some of the more brutal things. And I'm now in the minority. Like I was in the minority when I was into true crime way back when.
You mix your desire for escapism with your desire for realism in your television. And what you get is shows that are a fictional world, but a possible one. 30 Rock is not possible. It's ridiculous. It's supposed to be. The stuff that you go for, and honestly, the stuff that is best, similar to good science fiction, it's just a little moved over from reality. And in this case, reality is very bad. What if there was a precinct where all the cops were decent human beings, and the ones who weren't spent the entire show becoming better, decent human beings? It's what's good about the shows.
Yeah. So every Barney Miller episode opens with a cold opening. And I love that device because more often than not, it's first thing in the morning and we see them come in. Either someone's been working the overnight or they just beat Barney there by a few minutes, but it's the making coffee. It's the kind of like,
not
what's
to
going
interrupt
on.
you, but hence the title of this episode, Any Coffee, Nick?
Any coffee, Nick? Yes.
Yeah, that's a line from a cold open.
It sets the tone like, oh, this is going to be a Wojo episode. Or you get the tone of the city. Like, so any news about the garbage strike or there's rain on the roof? It's just a great device. And it allows the viewers to be like, all right, let me get my cup of coffee. Let me sit down. Let me get comfortable and just settle in. It's a really great, smart idea.
It's this ramp to get you onto the episode, this comfortable ramp. They're not super funny. They're not super exciting. They're just like, they really ease into it. I didn't really notice, but now that you say it,
right.
There you go. We're in Barney Miller now.
Yeah. And what's really cool about it is most, if not all, other shows didn't do that. And if they did have a cold open, it would have a musical bed to it. It wasn't just that dry sound of the door opening and closing. It was just, and I can hear it now echoing. Oh, what a great way to kick off every episode.
You mentioned that door.
Yeah.
That door, those file cabinets, that coffee machine, Barney's door, the pictures on the wall, the ground, the chairs, everything in there is so battered. I would watch a week-long documentary about the people who weathered the props on Barney Miller. A brand new box of donuts on Barney Miller is covered in dirt. Why is that?
It's so funny you say that because Barney Miller, and I have the Barney Miller box set, and one of the great things about it is it comes with every episode of Fish, the spinoff that was given to Abe Vigoda's character. And I was watching an episode of Fish one time with a friend of mine who also loves Barney Miller. And I just had to pause it at one section because Fish's character is bringing in groceries. He's putting them on the table. It was just, busy work or whatever. I paused it and I looked in. All of the props were old and like this brand new stuff he bought. Like the milk carton was just filthy and like had black stains on it.
Brand new things are filthy.
It's crazy. It's almost like they were just like, all right, listen, we don't have that kind of money. Let's just, because I get it when you want to like, weather the chairs and the desk. It's supposed to be an
everything
old
in the office
precinct.
makes perfect sense.
Yeah, but
even every file they pull out has been there for a long time.
But like
maybe
even
they're
sometimes
reusing paper.
They'll read a newspaper or they'll read a magazine and it's worn and
stained.
Like,
Yamana buys a box of donuts. baked goods, sexy baked goods from the sexual bakery down the
Oh,
street.
right.
And that a woman wants shut down because it's pornographic.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a classic bakery box, with those side flaps.
Yeah.
And it looks like it was found in an attic.
Yeah.
He just bought them.
It probably was. They were like, oh, we need that for this episode. And they ran up to the prop attic. They didn't overthink anything like that.
No, it's so unimportant. And I don't want people to think that I'm bored when I'm watching the show. So I start looking at details. I have a tendency to look at that stuff anyway.
Yeah. Especially when you're watching an episode for the fourth or fifth time, you're going to notice more.
Yeah. I will say this, though. If you haven't watched Barney Miller or you haven't watched it in 25 years, which I think is the case for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. Most people.
Don't think that my recommending Barney Miller to you is about nostalgia or
no.
It 100%
holds up.
People use that term way too much.
Yeah.
Barney Miller is fantastic on its own in 2023. It is a hilarious, moving show.
It's a great show. It's a perfect show. It still holds up. The laughs are consistent. And because of how humanistic the show was, there's not a lot of cringe aspect to it. It treats people like people. And
this show would be shut down by the right if it came out now as way too woke. Way too woke.
It's respectful of humans. And
it really is.
Yeah.
I mean, let's talk about some of the types of humans. These days, it would really be seen as like, oh my God, stop shoving it down our throats.
Right.
We get it. Harris is Black, and that's not easy.
Yeah. We know that there are gays. We know that there are homeless. We know that there are blind people who are poor. Like, you're right. That's something that I think is forgotten today, is that shows used to reflect society just by way of being truthful, by way of setting up the playing field so that they could do whatever. And this was set in New York City.
And if you're going to make 180 episodes or however many there are, and your show brings people on, you're going to meet
everybody.
The people in your neighborhood.
The 12th precinct, the old one,
the old one, too.
It's like the United Colors of Benetton. It's got, a black cop, a Polish cop, a Hispanic cop. Is he Puerto Rican?
I believe so, yeah. Yes, he absolutely is, because he's embarrassed by Puerto Rican criminals.
Chano is Puerto Rican. It's got an Asian character in the Japanese Nick, which is rare for the time, played expertly by Jack Sue. That alone was a rarity. And you see other shows. There's one, what would you call a token character of a safe ethnicity on most shows. But for the time, it was groundbreaking. And even, I don't know if you recall, season 1, there's a different Black character.
Yes. Yeah. Wilson, him and Fish go out on a call that Fish has trouble getting back from because they have to run.
Right. He feels like he let Wilson down.
Yeah. It's the very beginning of establishing that Abe Vigoda, he's done from the get-go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's crazy is like Abe Vigoda, he wasn't. But like when you see how long he lived, he seems like he was probably the youngest guy on the show. He just looked oldest. Let me bring up what this show did better than any other show at the time or now, which is the guest stars, played 9 times out of 10 by wonderful character actors who you knew by sight, but didn't really know their name.
Well, Hollis knew their names, but we didn't.
I knew some of their names. But
there are literally hundreds of them, right? There
really are. God, over the run of the show, I think the show ran from like 74 to 82, didn't it? Something like that.
Years. Yeah.
I think it was an 8-year show. And I know it ended in 82. So that might be it. I couldn't even guess because there are multiple character actors in each show. So let's say there were like 300 or 400.
I came up with 400.
Did you? Great. We have to be
using
right.
different IMDb style searches.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
And I like my guesstimation.
It's a good guesstimation.
I think what I said to you was this is the best collection of character actors in any TV series run. And no other TV show can touch it because no other series gave walk-ons via clever dialogue and unique situations the opportunity to steal a scene. And multiple times, these guest stars steal scenes and get applause breaks and get applause when they leave, like a jazz musician that just nailed a killer solo. It's beautiful. in its time, Barney Miller, much like my beloved Columbo, was seen as a prestige show. You know, if you could get a slot on that show, if you could nail down a part on that show, you were well respected as an actor.
I wouldn't doubt if actors were having conversations where they said, I got a part. You know, it's only 10 lines or it's only 6 lines, but it's on Barney Miller. And their actor friends going, oh, you got Barney Miller. Like, Barney Miller became this perfect environment, which part of what you just mentioned, to shine as an actor. I can picture movie studio people, other television people watching Barney Miller looking for people. And Barney Miller brought them through that door where their character was immediately asked his name by Barney or one of the cops and is referred to by name. 400 guest stars, and almost none of them are listed as name not mentioned. In like 95% of them, their name, the character's name is mentioned in the episode. And that's important because if someone's looking for them, get me the guy who played Nick Fulton on Barney Miller.
Right.
As opposed to get me that robber guy.
Right. Even, I think it's episode 1, Ramon. If I recall, Ramon is a junkie and he gets Fish's gun. And he's holding it on Barney. And other guys want to shoot him, and Barney stops them all from trying anything. He gets this scared young junkie to give him the gun. He calls him Barney, and he collapses in his arms, and he cries. And then that tense moment is immediately punctuated with, whose gun is this? And they cut to Fish, who
Bond.
Yeah, he doesn't even say anything. They just focus on his face, and it's just
We'll talk about this later. Barney says, Barney's trying to convince him, put the gun down, go through the process, we'll get you a fair trial. I'm a junkie holding a gun in a police station.
What am I going to do with a fair trial?
That guy is fantastic.
Oh, he's
great. He sets the tone for those, because there's a whole section of dudes on Barney Miller that are like handsome, tight pantsed, early 20s robbers.
And most of them didn't pop. Most of them, you saw them here, and then you saw them in a couple of episodes of other things. But every once in a while, there's a gem, like a Ray Sharkey or somebody.
That's a different walk-on.
That's a totally
Barney
different.
Miller. It's the less interesting walk-on is the actual criminal.
Actual people.
Right? Yeah.
Who is your favorite out of all of the character actors, the no-name, quote-unquote, actors who did guest appearances?
This one popped in my head very quickly. Likely because he was like 9 guys on the show, which is something the show did. Bring the guy back, not as a repeat offender.
No, as someone else.
He's a different criminal every time. And sometimes he's a good guy, sometimes he's a bad guy.
Even Dietrich started as a priest.
Yeah, he started
as a criminal, selling Bibles.
Yeah, so, Wojo, that didn't fly with Wojo.
Nothing does.
Okay, so my guy, and I figured I was trying to describe him, and you would tell me who he is, because I think he's probably well enough. So the way I would describe him is to say he's part Larry David's friend, the neurotic guy.
George Costanza?
Richard Lewis. So he's part Richard Lewis.
Oh, okay.
He's got a little bit of like bug eyes. He's sort of like Sal from Dog Day Afternoon.
Oh, you mean the guy from Return of the Living Dead?
I do mean that guy. Yes. The guy's name is Don Calfa. My favorite walk-on guy was that guy. He's the guy who sticks himself with suction cups to the top of the money train. The episode is people are copycatting crimes they see on TV, and he keeps saying, worked on TV. That guy is just such a great neurotic, like freaking out guy. Reminds me like a Dog Day Afternoon character.
John Cazale.
Yeah. He reminds me of Cazale. And it actually, he ends up in an episode where he's been picked up on he's a repeat offender. He's going to go to jail. So his one phone call is to his brother, and his brother brings a gun.
Oh, yeah.
They put all the cops and everyone who's at the 12th precinct into the cell.
It's funny you say that, because just thinking about it, it is very reminiscent of Dog Day Afternoon. And I wonder if that episode wasn't a reaction to the film.
I'd love to check the dates.
Yeah, because it probably shakes out that way.
He's like,
because I remember his brother kind of being very unsure.
And he starts saying things like, we're going to want a jet, and we
Yeah.
want this, and we want that. And I'm like, and they're like, there's 138 cops downstairs. And Levitt's
Right.
like 122. Several of the men are out sick.
Okay, that's
But,
a good one. No, he was great because he didn't even need to react to look like he was reacting.
Don
His
Culver had-
everyday look with those bug
Yeah.
eyes. Yeah, that's
he
cool.
looked like a junkie. He looked like
Whatever you
someone who's
needed.
Caught. I got caught. Oh my God, I got caught.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was great. That's my guy. Who's
cool.
your guy?
My guy is the beautifully well-spoken Roscoe Lee Brown, who played the escape artist. Yep, he was the escape artist.
He's in my top 3.
Oh, he's so great. He is a brilliant actor. He's got one of the most beautiful voices.
His voice made me pause and look up who he was.
A gorgeous voice, like a Shakespearean actor voice. His voice is so beautiful, by the way, that he narrates the story of Star Wars. And you haven't lived until you've heard Roscoe Lee Brown say, "A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away."
Oh, I bet.
What I loved about his appearance was that it was the first time on the show, I feel, that Barney ever had anyone that was sort of his equal. For this guy, escaping prison was like his art. And it was so beautiful to see Barney have someone like that to share a cup of coffee with and to shoot the breeze with. So it was a really cool episode, but I loved Roscoe Lee Brown. I love him in everything.
Yeah. Hey, if you're going to watch one episode of Barney Miller to see if you want to get back in, that's a good episode.
The escape artist. You're right.
Yeah.
You should tell people to do that.
When I look at Barney Miller, and we've mentioned the similarities before, MASH and Barney Miller, police and crime, war and death. It's funny, even though it's about crime and criminality and jail. And it's funny, even though it's about war and death, but it also has kindness and has empathy. Knowing that MASH came out in 1972 and Barney Miller came out in 1975, I have to say they learned from MASH, and that elements of Hawkeye and BJ and Potter were injected into characters like Barney.
It's funny because it seems like they took all the best characteristics of each of the characters on MASH, put them all into Barney, and then they surrounded him with, not one-dimensional characters, but archetypes.
Much more simple in comparison to Barney.
Yeah.
Less layers than Barney. Certainly Wojo is almost layerless for a while.
Yeah. And if you think about it, MASH sets the tone again when they add Winchester. They add an intellectual. And then later, Barney Miller adds Dietrich, their intellectual. And then later, Cheers adds Frasier, their intellectual. So, but it all starts with MASH. So MASH really set the tone for every kind of realistic, humanistic comedy.
Yeah, yeah.
We talked about guest stars. Who was your favorite police officer not named Barney Miller?
Right. I'm going to have to go Dietrich.
Me too.
Oh, really? Yeah.
He's the most modern, and a million other reasons. He's hysterical. He's brilliant.
He can deliver more types of jokes than the other guys. The other guys have that. Wojo has his jokes, and Harris has his jokes, and Jack Sue.
Yeah.
I would put Nick second. I mean, Nick is a comedian above.
Yeah.
It's funny because I used to think of this Jack Sue. I used to look at him like, is that guy sick? Like, what's wrong with him?
He's so got depressing. The weirdest body.
He's so depressing, and everything about him looks like his face is hanging, his body is hanging. Yeah. But he is funny.
So funny.
His timing. And him and Dietrich, but Dietrich's my favorite. Dietrich, he can do a face. There's an episode where Wojo sees a UFO, and they send a G-man to talk to him, and the G-man plays it off as a weather balloon. And of course, Dietrich steps in, because Wojo's like, I saw what I saw. And Dietrich's like, over the years, there have been plenty of reports of, and there's various types. There's people who say that and then there's the people who say that the aliens have been here all along and live among us.
Right. And then he does seem like an alien.
Wojo, and they absolutely think.
Yeah, he does seem like an alien.
That he's an alien? It's fantastic. I mean, he has a fantastic voice.
He has a fantastic voice, but also there's an episode, I don't know if you remember, that focuses on Fish and even follows him home. Fish does not like the arrival of Dietrich, and he wants to like go into early retirement or something. And Dietrich goes to his house to like tell him, I want to learn from you and everything. And he does a spot on Gregory Peck impression.
Yeah.
That is hysterical.
To the point where the other characters are going,
that's right.
That's an incredible Gregory Peck impression. Yeah, beautiful.
I love Dietrich. He's my favorite, but I almost, or maybe before the arrival of Dietrich, I would have to say Harris, because he's street smart, he's intellectual, he's creative, he's a good dresser.
Stylish, yeah.
Very stylish. He's the most versatile character outside of Barney. You know, there's more to him. And when he and Harris interact, you can see it. When Wojo talks to Barney, there's almost a kind of like child and parent kind of dynamic. So like Harris and Barney have kind of a camaraderie that is rare. And also, I think Harris, being the only Black character in that squad room at least, sees an ally in Barney. He always feels a level of respect coming from Barney that is reflected in their relationship that I really like.
Until they bring in the intellectual, Dietrich, Harris is the intellectual. And they actually play up. Harris does have to accept the fact that he's no longer gonna make the most author and playwright references.
Butting of heads that happens is mostly because of that. He feels on some level, he always had the trump card to throw down in a battle of wits in the squad room. And suddenly Dietrich is beating him at backgammon and like knows more foreign films than him. And I think Harris on some level actually likes it. I think he likes it because they have more in common, him and Dietrich.
They're roomies for a season.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Someone said, like, let's do more than have Harris deal with this new intellectual. Let's have them move in together.
Right.
And Harris has to deal with it in his face. And Harris starts coming to work every morning in a bad mood.
I smell a spinoff.
Oh,
that should have happened.
I would have watched that.
That would have been great. We tend to bring up something dark every episode, and it's because of me, I realize. And we have to talk about parts of shows that do not age well and parts of movies that do not age well as ones that age like fine wine. Barney Miller is a fantastic show, but I have to say Wojo has a hooker problem. He has a Madonna whore complex that rears its head not just once or twice, but several times every season. What is that about? And why does that character never evolve?
There's no lesson learning going on there. It's funny because he learns a lesson within the episode. He learns a small lesson within the episode.
But there's no
He starts
carryover.
the episode calling the hooker and walking the street, and you don't have a real job, and why don't you do something? And then he ends the episode like, I guess I could understand you're a person too. But then again, right back to square one. In my poking around looking for what people have to say about Barney Miller before I say what I have to say about Barney Miller, I saw people talking about Wojo's growth.
Oh, please.
And I'm like, I don't necessarily think I see Wojo's growth.
No, it's like we said before, he's a child. And what happens with a child? You teach them something and it's like, all right, I won't do it again. And then what do? There's no arc. And it's really frustrating because it rears its ugly head also when he's dating Wentworth, Linda Lavin's character.
And he's incapable of letting her take him out to dinner or
even do her job effectively. He's worried for her safety when she goes out on a call. He tries to, loom over her and stop her from interacting with the world. He doesn't respect her as a police officer. It's really a sad part of the show because it would be so easy. Give that character a bit of growth with regard to women.
I keep hoping that while I'm watching, do I see progress? Do I see small amounts of progress? But if you're saying this now, and I know that you sort of watched a little bit of the end and you saw it in there, then no, it doesn't happen.
But again, that's where we have to mention that for the time, even portraying that problem on screen was groundbreaking. It's from the age of Archie Bunker. It's from the Norman Lear years, when All in the Family was 1971 it premiered. So you have this kind of school of TV where showing you the problem sometimes was enough. It didn't pretend to have a solution. in that way, it was realistic in that men whom this is ingrained in don't change overnight.
And it also is depressing because it's like Reinhold Weege wrote it down.
Yeah.
And they maybe they thought like this will help bring this to the surface and maybe people will discuss it. And we're here to tell them, no, it didn't help at all.
You know, you brought up Reinhold Weege, who there are certain, and Reinhold was one of the top writers on the show. He also created Night Court.
Did not know that.
Yeah, in '84 or whatever.
Not surprised.
And yeah, he's brilliant. So I always saw his name there too. But there are the names in Barney Miller I'm going to remember on my deathbed. You got Danny Arnold and Theodore J. Flicker, who created the show. You have
Can I throw one out and see if it's one of them? Pitlick.
Noam Pitlick. He directed a ton of episodes. Reinhold and the guys produced a bunch of them. Reinhold wrote some great ones. But like those names just...
They're your Thad Mumfords.
My Thad Mumfords. Oh, that's great. Oh, I love it. I love that you remember
I could literally see calling that type of thing the name that you remember coming up, the first and last name going by and being remembered by us. And when I say Thad Mumford, I'm bringing up one of the memorable names from the end of MASH.
Yep.
We could talk about another show in the future and I could go, you have any Thad Mumfords from this show?
The Thad Mumford should be a recurring feature of this.
I could see
almost
that.
like a hall of fame for
real
those
quick,
names.
Give me a Thad Mumford from Columbo.
Jackson Gillis.
All right.
He's very important to that show. When he came on board, forget about it. The whole thing was set, even after Levinson and Link left. Look at this. I'm doing a fucking Columbo episode.
One more thing.
Yeah.
I wanted to mention something. Barney Miller related to you and I, which is early on, upon meeting you, we connected. There's a thing where two guys meet in New York City. It's hard to meet people in New York City. People are like, I got plenty of friends and I'm a busy guy. And you meet someone and you go, oh, hey, what's up? And you and I met and we, oh, hey, what's up, each other. You may not remember that. I remember somehow Levitt came up.
Little Levitt.
So for those who don't know who Levitt is, he was the short uniformed cop who would deliver the mail to the guys in Barney Miller in the 12th precinct, and eventually became a detective. And he dreamed of being a detective the whole time. And he's an unsung hero of the show.
Played by Ron Carey, a great comedian who's in Fatso, one of my favorite comedies.
Perfect, because Levitt came up with us in the same room. I don't even remember where it was. I'm sure it was a bar. Not because we were alcoholics, but because
speak for yourself.
In spite of the fact,
there it is.
In spite of the fact, because you were a DJ and I was a bartender.
Yeah,
but it came up, and Levitt came up, and I didn't have a lot to say about Levitt, but I said, "I got it. I ain't got it," which is a high anxiety reference.
Oh, my favorite.
And you did the thing, which is a thing that guys would occasionally do to me in New York City, and it was always memorable for me. You said, what'd you say your name was?
Oh, did I really?
Yes. Which is a version of, I've forgotten you. I wrote you off as uninteresting. But now I'm very interested. But now I'm interested.
If you let me, I will be your good friend. Yeah. Oh, that's funny.
And I bring it up because I was thinking like, that's what we call a Thad Mumford. This is what I call what'd you say your name was? It's a thing where you got to rub against 100 people a day in New York City. And if you're a bartender or a DJ, you're going to rub against several hundred.
Yeah.
And you
usually the wrong kind.
Yeah. And you can't dig into all of them. It would be depressing. Yeah. But little things rise to the top and connect you.
That's so funny. I'm so glad you remember that because I do not. That's such a great origin story. That's funny.
It was memorable for me. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
And bonding on Levitt is terrific. I'll say one more thing about Levitt. I'd like to see a cut of every Levitt exit.
Oh, just spinning out of the door.
Oh my God.
The door.
He spins out like 9 different ways. Sometimes he goes around twice. It's beautiful.
Oh, he's fantastic. Yeah, he's underrated. And what's wild is you said, he makes detective. And he does for a while. And then by the end of the series, guess who's back in uniform?
Oh, yeah.
Levitt is
I,
back in uniform, and then they give him a victory at the end. Luger tells him, he's like, he's saying goodbye to everyone and giving them all their assignments in the finale. And Levine, and he's like,
oh,
it's
right.
Levitt, Carl Levitt. And he like yells at him, Levitt, you remember that? And he goes, it's Sergeant Carl Levitt. He like was playing him. He got a promotion, which was cool.
That's fantastic. I love that for two reasons. One, I love it because Levitt gets a promotion. And two, I love it because it's a chance for Luger to be a quality person, because he is a good person.
He is a good person. He's just locked in a lot of his taught and learned.
He loves to be accepted.
Yes.
He loves to be respected. And he's been surrounded by New York City cops his whole life. And
he's the last of his breed. So he doesn't have anyone. He's very lonely, which is why he shows up all the time at the precinct. But anyway, as long as we're there, do you remember how the series ends?
I don't. I was going to ask you before Barney Miller has been taken off of Amazon Prime.
You kids today, you got to own some media.
They cut my legs off.
Yeah.
They took my thumb, Charlie. I'm going to buy a DVD player and a box set so I can watch Barney Miller whenever I want.
The ending of Barney Miller is really spread over about 3 episodes. And in one, while doing plumbing, they find an old gun, a rifle behind the wall. This archaeologist ends up dating it. The upshot of that is they find out that the precinct used to be run by Theodore Roosevelt, former president, and before that, I believe, former police commissioner. So they're getting the 12th precinct declared an NYC landmark, which all the cops are thrilled about, until it turns out that the city is using this opportunity to sell the building to this slumlord type, and they're all going to have to get kicked out. Their new assignments finally come in the final episode, and they're all being split up and sent to different precincts. And Harris is being sent to Flushing Meadows, which irks him as the slick Manhattanite that he has to be in Queens, Barney. So he threatens to leave the force.
Good tone.
So it's a fitting end and a very realistic end, bureaucratically speaking, to how this show would have ended and how a precinct usually ends.
Yeah.
Because, he has that moment, Barney does, where it's just him turning out the lights. And it's very similar to a later moment that they give Sam Malone on Cheers, where he realizes that he's home. And Barney looks at each of the desks and they play a little clip of Chano, of Fish, of all of the guys that came before, of Jack Sue. So it's a very nice way to put the entire series to bed.
Has to be a fun thing to do when your series went as well as it did.
Yeah. You have the rights to close it. A lot of times they just take it off the air. They cancel it. So.
Oh, right. Yes. That's very true. I can appreciate Barney Miller doing this ending that seems so tasteful and so enjoyable and not trying that hard. We're going to be realistic, which is what you like about the show. You go to different precincts. These friendships never last forever. That's not how the world works. Whereas MASH just was pulling their hair out. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? It has to be incredible. It has to be amazing.
Yeah.
Everybody has to do their bit that they do 9, 10 times. I know it's the most watched. I know that it delivered in several ways, trying way too hard. So it's nice because you're jumping me ahead 5 seasons. I'm okay with it. I know that there's no spoilers on this show, but that's so nice to hear that it was a reasonable, they didn't act like they had to just jump a bunch of sharks.
No, I'd put it up there with any of them. This ending, the ending to Newhart, the ending to Cheers.
Sure,
just
the ending.
Brilliant, just really good.
And the ones you just mentioned, though, it's an ending.
Yeah.
It's not a you know what? Finale is part of the problem. Finale is how you end a season.
Yeah.
An ending is how you end the show.
Yeah.
Slip away. I prefer to and then we blow everything up. I mean, I understand if your show is about blowing everything up, then that's fine.
Right. You know what else Barney Miller did great in the ending? it gave quite a few character actors a victory lap. In that last episode, Ray and all, I'm not going to name all these people, but you know them when you see them. And so all of these character actors got together. They came in a group like people do on a sitcom, and they gave Barney an award. And he read to the men of the 12th precinct for, you know, being such good guys or whatever. And it listed all of the cops on it. It was great because it was a way of acknowledging. I keep calling them guest stars, but I don't even think they would call them anything so, you know, so kind of glorious. It was a way of acknowledging that those people really helped make the show. It gave them a moment in the sun, which was nice.
And them thanking Barney is them thanking the show. Like,
yeah,
hey, thanks for the opportunity. And no, thank you. One of the main things that we can come away with from talking about Barney Miller is that just the ultimate character actor vehicle in a way that is so far above others, like it's not even worth mentioning.
And speaking of which, the way they handled the death of Jack Sue.
I'm not familiar.
Was great.
Like, I don't remember, and I haven't seen it recently.
I haven't seen it recently either, but Jack Sue, the actor who played Nick, died.
Mid-season,
like, mid-season. And all the actors addressed the camera talking about Jack Sue. And they talked about how much they loved him. And then the episode was all clips of Jack. It was all clips of Nick's best moments. And at the end, they again signed off. And each one of the actors got to talk. I think Max Gale, who plays Wojo, was like breaking down a little. He was on the verge of tears. And it was just such a sweet thing to see. It showed you the kind of feeling, the kind of empathy of the people who made this show. And they came across exactly as you would expect them to be.
Yeah, it's an empathetic show. 1970s cop show. What word comes to mind? Empathy.
Yeah. Other shows, they just write out characters. Or if someone dies, they don't mention it because it's a comedy. What do you want to do? You want to kill the comedy? So ballsy.
What's the word I'm looking for? Integrity. That shows integrity. How dare you figure out a way around his death? You walk through his death.
Yeah.
That's integrity.
Yep, absolutely.
I wanted to mention, talking about empathy, I tried to come up with some questions I could ask or whatever, but basically, this is the question I wanted to ask you. Who are the bad guys on Barney Miller? Because they're cops and they arrest people, and we're familiar with cops and robbers. So the show is about cops, the good guys, and robbers, the bad guys, right? No, there are hardly any bad guys on that show. Like, who do you remember being the bad guys on that show?
Here's what I'd say. The bad people on that show are the bad people on that show. And they happen to be bureaucratic cops like Scanlon trying to dig up dirt.
Internal affairs?
He's internal affairs, always trying to dig up dirt. They're bad cops like a cop who is shaking down gay people, like who, you know, turns out not to be a cop, I think, who's just masquerading as one. The husband who raped his wife. You know, it's people who are just bad people, but it never points at a group of people and calls them bad people. You know, and that's cool because there's good and bad in every single profession and creed and race and everything that you could point to, every walk of life.
Yeah, and the show is utterly aware of that, painfully aware of that.
Yeah. So Dave and I tried to find an actor working today who we would like to see as Barney Miller. And we're not just being shallow because he bears a striking resemblance, especially in Dave's graphic, to Barney Miller, but because he's a good actor and he brings a little color to the role. He's a Latin actor, Pedro Pascal.
Could not be a better Barney Miller replacement for today than Pedro Pascal.
I want to see a reboot with Pedro.
It's one of those cases where the actor makes the reboot necessary.
That's true. He's the cart before the horse.
He's the cart before the horse.
And Hal Linden was so great in the role, we just have to say.
It's not an easy role to cast.
It's not an easy role, and he's so identifiable in it. I loved him in Black's Magic after that, with Henry Morgan from MASH as his dad. But he is pretty much still Barney Miller in everyone's mind to this day because he just inhabited that role so beautifully. So, Pedro Pascal, if you're listening.
He'd be honored. I'm sure he'd be honored.
Yeah, make it happen.
Yeah, let's do it.
I wanted to wrap up just acknowledging that it has perhaps, I'll say perhaps because I don't know what you're going to throw at me, perhaps the greatest TV theme of all time. By far the greatest TV instrumental theme of all time. But can you think of anything to top it?
There's only one obvious contender, and I put it second, which I think a lot of people would be like, oh, you're crazy. But it's Sanford and Son. Sanford and Son is the obvious
Really
contender.
good. Really good.
Really
Yeah, it's
good.
instrumental. It's character based. It almost sounds like an old man walking through a junkyard.
Like a truck,
Yeah.
like it sounds junkyardy.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is Barney Miller. It's like the bass being played with a short strap. Boom.
Mm-hmm.
Boom.
Yeah.
Boom.
It's very New York. Jazz is very New York. So it's right on the money.
It's Greenwich Village at the time. It's,
Yep.
You could probably see someone
Jazz
playing
clubs.
that near the precinct.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's also a thing, we talked about Thad Mumford. There's also a thing about the font at the end. You see it going by. And it's, again, so gritty, so dirty. There's pictures of the city that aren't like, look at that beautiful city. It's pictures of the city that looks very sweaty and dusty.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. I can't think of another TV theme that I don't skip through. Sometimes I do when I hit play all on my box set and I'm like, I really want to get through it. But I can't think of another TV theme that I don't skip on a regular basis. It's just, it never grates on my nerves. It's never too much. The theme song to Friends, by the way, I want to just kill somebody every time if I hear it once, I want to kill somebody.
I dive for the remote on the off chance that I might hear that clap.
I don't even
make it to the clap.
I hear the and I want to fucking take a hostage.
Allow me to cleanse your palate with,
please.
That's who is that? That's
is it Rockford?
Yes, that's Rockford Files, which
Jim Rockford.
is also very high
I
up.
thought of putting him third, and you have the answering machine at the beginning of it.
You've reached Jim Rockford, yeah. Rockford Files is terrific. And then what is?
Oh, you're thinking White Shadow.
Oh, maybe yes.
I got you. We're on the same wavelength.
Yeah.
Bruce Paltrow, by the way, is my Thad Mumford for White Shadow. It's Gwyneth's dad who created it.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So on the Paltrow note, why don't we leave it there? Okay, Dave. Always a pleasure.
Hollis and Dave would like to thank you for enjoying Pop Culture Graveyard.